Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and today we continue on the Alfarrari build and we need to start looking at trying to line up some doors. Okay, so before we get started today on the shell, I just thought I'd take you through what we've been doing in the background, trying to work out the adapter plate for this Ferrari engine to the Subaru gearbox. Those of you who have watched this previously will have seen how I went through and took all my measurements and got my dimensions for my adapter plates, and Chris, who has been helping out fantastically behind the scenes, has gone through and designed up pretty much all of the adapter plate now, and we're just cross-checking. And the way I did that is I actually went in and got a couple of water jet cut templates of the Subaru gearbox plate and the Ferrari engine face. So this is water jet cut out to the exact dimensions that I need, and then I went up to my friend's place, got on his lathe and made up a couple of 15mm dowels. These are barrel dowels, so these are longer than what I need, but these are the right size to fit onto the Ferrari engine, so then I can then slide on this template and see how well it fits and see if my measuring actually adds up to a plate that will actually fit the car. After playing around with this for a little bit, I found that all of the holes are just a little bit tight. So it won't slip completely over the center crank here. It's just too tight, but it sits on there and the bevel quite nice and neatly. And you can see that the dowels line up perfectly on both sides, and everything else looks nice and neat and tidy. The tolerances all look good, so I think my measurements are a win. And it's the same again on the Subaru gearbox. This all fits on quite nicely. The dowels were a little bit tight again. I just had to just drill with a 10mm drill bit, just so they just took the very edge off, and it all fits up beautifully. I was worried about the crank there. It looks like it's not centralized, but if you actually have a look at the play of it, it's naturally sitting at the top of its play, but by moving it around, it's actually, I think it's pretty central. I think it's perfectly where it needs to be. All the other holes line up beautifully, so I'm calling that a win. So basically that is just double checking my measurements, and I am happy now to move forward, and I'll put a picture here. You can see this. This is the 3D image of the adapter plate that Chris has made, and it looks fantastic. So there's been a lot of work that he's put in behind the scenes on that, and I am extremely grateful to you, Chris. Thank you very much. So the next step is to actually send that off and get it made out of billet aluminium, and see if it'll actually bolt up, and we can actually then try and fit the engine and gearbox together, and then we can work on putting it in the car. Okay, so now it's time to get back onto the shell of the car, and as you would have seen in the last couple of weeks, I was fixing all of the inner frame rails on this car, getting it all right on both sides so that I can actually put the rest of the skin back on the car. I've cut pretty much the back of the car off. I need to put it all together, and that is where I actually ordered a bunch of parts from Classic Alpha in the UK. They've been really great to deal with, by the way, and they make basically every single part for this car. Everything is available through them, and they have replacements for every single panel, which is fantastic because half of mine are junk. So the next move I need to make is to put these bottom frame rails in. Everything's packed so nicely. I've got these outer frame rails to put on, but before I can do that, I need to work systematically through the car. The only thing that I have left that's reference is the corners of these front guards, the front edges of the front guards. The rest of the car is gone. I've got that, and I've got the boot lid, and I've got to try and line up every other panel to that. So before I can put these sills on, I need to get the doors on, and to get the doors on, I need to get these, the front corner of these guards, just get that straight. And at the moment, it's slightly, there's a couple of dents on this side that I want to have a look at. So the first thing I need to tackle is this dent right here. It's in a real pain of a spot, and you can actually see there's some teeth marks here where somebody's used a shrinking hammer or something on it before to try and straighten out this this panel. Obviously there was a crease line in it before or something. Something's been hit there. You can also see in here that it's been pushed in on the inside of the guard here. I'm pretty sure that's basically from people trying to get implements in behind, get dollies, etc. in behind to try and knock this out. I am going to see what I can do now with hammer and dolly and see if I can knock that out a little bit, and then I've got another little trick up my sleeve. All right, I've got a lot of that dent out already. That is looking much, much better. It's quite close to where I want it, but it's still not perfect. And on this car, I'm trying to work towards a file finish. Now, what that means is basically get the metal perfectly flat, requiring basically no body filler at all. It takes a fair bit more time to do that, and a lot of skill. And I am a complete beginner at this sort of stuff. Well, I can't say that. I've done my 911, I've done my DATs, and that's where I learnt the basics, and I've been trying to improve those processes. And what I was doing here is I was using a bumping file. Obviously, this one was cheap enough that when I heated it and bent it, it actually bent. The reason you're using a file as opposed to, say, something like a smooth flat spoon like this is often referred to as a shrinking file, or the shrinking hammers. Technically they don't actually shrink, but what they sort of do is, with a dent like this, for example, when you're hitting it with this as opposed to a hammer, with a hammer you'll end up stretching the metal a lot. It stretches, but when between the hammer and the dolly, it squishes the metal flat and stretches it out and makes it thinner and covering more area. This has almost a shrinking effect because of the teeth in the file. When it hits either side of the dent, it sort of hangs on either side of the dent, and as you're pushing from behind, it pushes the metal together, and instead of stretching it out, sort of holds it there and just keeps making the dent smaller. So in effect, it can get a bit of a shrinking effect on it. So that's what I've done here, and it seems to be looking really good. I'm going to go over it now with the body file. Now this is not actually to try and take the metal off. All I'm trying to do is just trying to shine it up and show me the places that are low and the places that are high, so that I can concentrate on those places and see if I can get this nice and flat. So I thought I'd get myself a new toy, and this is a very cheap thing I got off of Amazon. I'll put a link in the description. Basically what this is a stud welder. So this is designed so that I can put these little studs into it and spot weld them onto the car, and then pull out dents that you can't get behind. Now I managed to get behind that dent better than what I thought I was going to be able to. I managed to get it in, get it all out without really using it. But the other thing that I have seen these things used for, which I haven't tried, I haven't actually even used this thing yet, you can use them to shrink the metal and use the sort of spot weld function to shrink the steel on the car, and I'm going to try and do that now. Although this panel looks reasonably flat to the naked eye, once you get the ruler up against it, you can actually see the low spots around there, and particularly along here you can see that there's a high spot just in near the edge of the door, by the fact that the ruler doesn't sit flat on the car. The way I'm going to do it is to work my way around the high spot. Instead of just going straight for the middle of the high spot and trying to shrink it, I'm going to work a little tiny spot weld at a time and just shrink my way around the edge of the high spot and bring it down gradually. And that, I think, is the way I'll get this panel flat. right, I've just spent far too long on this one area. It is very flat. And this is where my microphone has given up the ghost. But this panel is very flat now, but it has a lot of old hammer marks on it that have been there from the previous dent repairs, and it's stretched the metal. I can't get rid of every single hammer mark. Because this metal's been worked so much, it's quite difficult, at least for my skill level, which is very little, to get this perfectly flat. But running the straight edge over it now, it's probably got at the worst 0.5 millimeter is would be the biggest gap I've got. So it's straight all the way up and down. It's got a nice even curve, and I'm quite happy with that. So I'm calling that a win. Moving on. Okay, so now I've got that edge good on the car. The next thing to tackle is some hinges to put some doors on. And basically what I've got here, I've got 2 uppers, 2 lowers. They've all been sandblasted, so they're all looking nice and clean. But the lowers actually seem to be quite tight, but the uppers, I don't know if their camera's picking that up, but there's quite a bit of movement there. And that doesn't seem like a crazy amount here, but you exaggerate that over the length of a door, and that makes a lot of play. And so what I've done is I went again to Classic Alpha. They've got all this stuff, and ordered a hinge repair kit. So I'm going to replace the pins in both of the top door hinges right now, which means pressing them out. Okay, now the hinges are repaired, and they're pretty tight, but they're working, and there's definitely no play in them. So it's time to hang this door, and now I'm going to mess around and see if I can at least get this body line just right. This end at the moment is a bit of a nightmare. We'll concentrate over here. All right, so after a bit of adjusting, I've got a nice panel gap down the bottom here. The door's sitting in a little bit here, but if I adjust it, the top hinge is on an angle, so when it brings the door out, it also brings the door closer. So what I actually need to do is put a shim behind the top hinge. So I'm going to make a shim out of one of my pieces of scrap 1.6mm plate. I'm going to trace the other hinge, which is identical, onto it, and cut out and make myself a shim. All right, so with the shim in that door now, it actually lines up quite nice. You can actually see the line of the door is quite good. Maybe from this angle, maybe it does sit down a little bit, yeah. It's sitting quite nicely now. Needs a little tiny bit of massaging between these two to get this all perfectly flat. So now the door is good. I need to just do a quick test fit of this lower sill panel and see how that fits. If I got it the right way around. Okay, so you can see now that I removed the door again, just so I can get this lower sill panel sitting nicely in place. It's not welded in, it's just sitting there at this stage. I need to make sure that everything is lined up nicely so that I can get this panel here, this replacement lower rust repair panel. Because this rusts out all the time, Classic Alpha make this piece as well, which is nice and handy. So this is going to weld onto the bottom of this here, over the top of this lower panel. But before I get to any of that, I want to take you back on the other end and just show you what we're dealing with back here. So having a look down this end, this panel here doesn't actually look to be in too bad of a shape. You can see there's a previous repair here, and these flanges here are still the leftover of the old rear quarter panel that I haven't cut off yet. But when you come around the corner, that's when you see how bad the damage really is. Down the bottom here, I still have to fit this panel underneath here. This is the rust repair panel, so that comes up to about this level or so. So that's not a big deal. What is a big deal is this panel here. You can see they've cut it the whole way up, which is horrible. And they've cut it across here as well. This should all be one piece all the way down here, including this bit here. I don't know what they've done. They just butchered it to get it to fit again. And this piece here is actually part of this piece here. They should be together, and they're not. So, yeah, that is going to require a bit of work, and I might even see if I can head down to Tim and see if he has that piece on an old shell or something that's scrap that I can cut out and reuse, because unfortunately this is one of the very few panels that they don't make. So no, it doesn't seem like I've gotten much done today, but I am quite happy with the progress moving forward. Spending a lot of time on this panel beating work was, I think, was really worthwhile. I've learned a lot, and my panel beating is getting much better. It is definitely not as smooth as I really hoped, but with so many hammer marks in there, I think it'd be very difficult to get that perfectly flat and get rid of every single hammer mark, because they've stretched the metal in such small spots that it's just, it's beyond my abilities anyway. Alright, well, that is all for this week, so I think it means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, between 1935 and 1937, the brothers Oscar and Gino Yankovic built a one-off mid-engine prototype in Fiume, which is now Rijeka, Croatia. This car was the first modern mid-engine centre-seat sports car. It was also the first car to take account of the newly developed aerodynamics, which gave it a fully enveloped undertray. This helped to keep the nose from lifting at high speed, and it was fitted with a 6C2300 straight-six engine, which was placed behind the driver's seat and had a horizontal radiator to keep its low-profile shape. With the outbreak of the war, the car was hidden in the Yankovic's garage until in 1946, Gino was accused of helping the Nazis and he faced execution. So to avoid execution, he fled to Yugoslavia from Italy in his Aero Spider. He drove at high speed underneath the border guard gate. The guards opened fire and their shots burst the tyres and damaged the rear bodywork, but he still managed to escape. Because all the family assets were seized, the car was sold eventually and has since been fully restored to its former glory.
Alright, that is it for another week. There's slow progress, but I want to do this right. So
No, better to go slowly and surely.
Yes. I'm really happy with how my panel beating skills are improving over time. A bit of practice and a bit of patience, I think, is what's paying off. Patience is something that's harder to come by.
That's something we've been practicing on, because we've been doing this now for 3.5 years.
Almost 4 years.
Almost 4 years.
Almost 4 years.
Yeah.
Doing this, working on these cars and building these projects. So it's been going well, and I'm enjoying ramping things up. All right.
I'm looking forward to an end. I want to get to sit in and drive it. Anyway, hope you're enjoying it. If you are, please, you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Also, if you'd like to see the videos a day earlier, you can become a patron, and that would really help us out.
Anyway, that's it for another week, so we'll see you on the next one.
Bye, guys.
See you guys.
God, that was pretty good though, right? Oddly good. I don't even know what I'm saying now. It's like I've done this so many times now, suddenly things are clicking into place, and it's like the words are just coming out, flowing. It's just as weird as like you just like look at something, you can just like recite the whole page. Brain is a muscle.